The Pittsburgh Steelers have not been a thorn in the side of the Jaguars. We own the advantage. I'll tell you all about it in just a second on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Is your team every day, and I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm going to direct you over to our YouTube page. Make sure you slide over to the Locked On Jaguars page, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and then hit that bell so you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. Also, it's very important that when you're at work or in your car or somewhere else where you can't watch, make sure you listen wherever you get your audio podcast to Locked On Jaguars to make sure that you do not miss an episode that we drop every single day. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And speaking of getting started, my everydayers start out with me every single day, making us your first listen, and we appreciate you. And you can do the exact same thing. All you got to do is make yourself an everydayer. All right, I'm going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Jaguars and the matchup. We're looking at memories. And in my mind, without doing a whole bunch of guesswork, this is a fan feeling. This is me covering the team. I have gotten probably more joy out of the series between the Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers than anybody. So by the time this show ends, I'll show you how the stars shined in that matchup, how realignment ended. This is what we'll do in segment 2 right here. Realignment ended that rivalry. A lot of people don't know the Jaguars started out in the same division as the Ravens, the Browns, and the Bengals. They did. And along with the Steelers and then eventually, and the Ravens, they moved the Jaguars, and that kind of skewed the way those historical games that we had for so long, it went away. I expect that to go away after a while, though, and I'll tell you why. The Steelers are big in Jags history, and that's where we'll start. We'll start playing ourselves right there. They've met 27 times, 27 in their history. By the way, let me tell you about the Pittsburgh Steelers. To me, maybe the greatest organization historically in pro sports, because they have so many Super Bowls. I think they got 6. More importantly for me is I'm 55. I'll be 55 here in a couple of weeks, right? Not a couple of weeks, 5-6 weeks. They've had 3 head coaches my whole life. The Jaguars have had 3 head coaches in the last 5 years. 4 years. That tells you how consistent and awesome they have been as an organization, right? Lately, they've gone away a little bit. They've kind of gotten into, they haven't had a quarterback since Roethlisberger retired. They've gotten to that mediocre area. It goes to show you how important the coach and the quarterback are to a team, but it really shows you how important finding the right quarterback. In fact, it shows you how not finding the right quarterback can really, really hinder a franchise. So with that being said, as a storied franchise and a storied team, the Jaguars have played 27 times. 14-13, baby. The Jags own the advantage. Shout out to Carter Critiques, my man Chris Carter, for Locked On Steelers. But the Jaguars have handled their business when it comes to the Steelers. A lot of these games have been really, 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 really contested. A lot of hits, a lot of nasty, a lot of things you didn't expect to happen. We're going to talk about all of that stuff. But it just feels like when people say, why are you talking about the Steelers, man? They don't even play them this year. You know, I get it. We don't play the AFC North. We played them last year. That's not the point. The point is even when the Jaguars and the Steelers were no longer in the same division, the Jaguars and the Steelers always had these games, man, these knockdown games. The games where Roethlisberger came in here on a Sunday night and stole one at the very end. Stole it, right? And he stole it because the Jaguars started out hot. Rasheed Mathis picking the ball off, running it back right to me in the end zone. I was standing right there in the south end zone, and he ran it back. He zigzagged, and he ran right towards where I was standing. And it was I wasn't standing. I was standing, but I was in my seats over in the 240 section. But just unbelievable action in all of these games. What I tell you, what has made it? We're gonna make sure we talk about the players, but what made this rivalry what it was silly stuff. Greg Lloyd taking a cheap shot on one of the nicest people to ever play in the NFL, that is Keenan McCardell. Fred Taylor going up to, I think it was still known, I think it was Three Rivers. It wasn't Heinz Field. Fred went up to Three Rivers and busted them up for about 234, something like that. I wrote it down because I just went through 234 yards on 30 carries and 3 touchdowns. No one had ever seen the Steelers defense get carved up like that. When I say nobody, I mean nobody saw the Steelers defense get carved up like that before. Recently, not real recently, but I recall when the Jags went up in 2017 in the regular season and won a game, and Leonard Fournette ran a 91-yard touchdown all the way back at the end to seal it. I think he hit like 22 miles per hour. That was in 2017. So this little thing that when the Jaguars finally won against Buffalo and they had to go up in 2017-18 season in the playoffs, there was this thought, man, they already went up there and won, man. You can't do that 2 times in a row. Not to mention get down 21-0 early in the game. Guess what? Guess who showed up? Those comeback cats showed up. That's right. Ran down on them, as they say. Walked them down. Had an epic victory. Guys making plays all over the place. I remember they went deep. Keelan Cole went deep when nobody expected it. Leonard Fournette ran another touchdown. Jalen Ramsey was jumping around, picking off the ball. Miles Jack was all over the place. They start sacking. Ben Roethlisberger had him running for his life. And I will admit, AB had a marvelous game because that's what AB does, right? He's catching the ball with one hand and everything else. The Jaguars came away with that victory. And when they came away with that victory, they came home in a very victorious way. They came home in one of the coolest ways you can imagine, man. They flew home. They called the people and they opened the stadium up. It was cold as hell that night. I wanted to go, but you know how certain people are with cold weather. They just not, I said it. Certain people ain't going out in the cold weather unless somebody's hungry and need to go to the hospital. Anybody leaving the house going out in cold weather, right? So I watched it on TV. They played it live. Then at the time I was doing radio and TV, I got a phone call to come do some TV. Are you serious? It's cold outside, man. I ain't coming out there do no TV. Y'all should have told me this earlier. Yeah, but we didn't know they were going to fly home and literally fly over a stadium full of 25, 30,000 people cheering them on and looking out the window and then them posting it on social media. And the people could see them taking pictures and they could see the whole scene and everybody was going crazy. Plane lands at the airport, 35, 40 minutes later, bus pulls up. Here come the players walking. I mean, I'm talking about John Wayne. I'm talking about Ric Flair, Floyd Mayweather, whatever. Walk, The Rock, The Undertaker. It was just that explosive and inspiring that night. Those dudes came in there dressed to the T because Tom Coughlin would have fined them if they weren't dressed to the T. But dudes had on double-breasted peacoats and scarves and Burberry stuff all wrapped around their face. They didn't look like no football team, when they came back that night. They looked like an R&B group, but that's all right. They came in and that place went crazy. And then this moment, what are you going to do in New England? Jalen Ramsey said, we're going to New England and we're going to win that. Of course, we know that didn't happen because Miles Jack was not down, and they said he was. There's another play right there, so we're going to add that one to it. We'll talk about that one tomorrow when we add in all the greatest plays of all time. Right now, we're going to focus on the Steelers. And I'm going to tell you why realignment, while good and sensible, kind of set the Jaguars back as a team trying to get a whole bunch of tradition going. And I get it and I understand, but That's exactly what happened. How realignment ended this rivalry and sort of ended who our rivals were for a long time, and kind of made the Jaguars feel like y'all just got into the league a second time in the last 15 years. I'm going to tell you all about that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. First, I got to let you know about FanDuel, man. One, FanDuel is fan cool, right? It is all cool for the fans at FanDuel. That's something I made up because, well, I just like making up cool stuff, right? It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Now, here's what's going on. If we haven't got the finals, by the time you guys hear this, if we haven't got the finals done, we're getting close to it. You're going to have two teams butting head and going at it in the NBA. So it's real important that you look up and read up all the information at FanDuel that they have before you make your wager. And the NHL too. They're about to hit their final two. That's $150 on spreads, money lines, and player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And segment number 2 has started here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for joining us and making us your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen as well. Just had something in my eye. I'm sorry. Realignment usually is a good thing. It was a good thing in this case, but it had a bad side effect. That side effect for the Jacksonville Jaguars was when you're a new organization, you're trying to establish tradition. You are trying to establish rivalries. You are trying to establish things that your fans will hold on to. When the Jaguars, being a new organization, got realigned to the AFC South, it was practical, and it made all the sense in the world from a travel regional standpoint, right? It did. However, something was lost in doing what was right. Those rivalries with Baltimore and Cincinnati and Cleveland, to go along with Tennessee and Pittsburgh every single year. It was, you just thinking Fred Taylor and Mark Brunell and Jimmy Smith and them going up against Ray Lewis and that crew. I remember Ray Lewis. I remember it was Tennessee who thought they ran it in Ray Lewis. You remember Ray Lewis here? Eddie Georgia took the ball from him and scored a touchdown, and all of a sudden it turned into the Ravens division for like 5 or 6 years, and then the Ravens and the Steelers start going at it. Well, this is the kind of stuff that used to happen in the AFC South. I mean, it wasn't the AFC South then. Was it the AFC North? I think that's what it was. But the Jaguars shouldn't have been up there anyway. But they did that because of the way it was set up with with the expansion and all of that stuff. And back then, for the younger people that don't really quite remember this, I remember when Atlanta was in the AFC West with the 49ers and the Saints and the Rams. Yep. I remember when the Cardinals, who used to play in St. Louis, was in the NFC East with Washington. And then when they went out to Arizona, they switched them to the NFC West. I remember that too. I remember these divisions were all over the place with some of these teams, man. I remember Indianapolis was not Indianapolis. They were Baltimore, and they were in the AFC East. So when they realigned it, it moved around for a lot of teams. But that particularly hurt a new franchise because you're just trying to figure out how you're supposed to be moving, how you're supposed to be thinking with these rivals. You had these things built up, and then all of a sudden it switched. And when it switched, they did carry over the Tennessee thing, but it switched. You had the Colts, you had the Texans. It just didn't quite feel the same. It just didn't quite feel the same. And then there were only 4 teams in those divisions at that point moving forward. So realignment changed things a little bit for the Jaguars. And it was really the thing that it changed was the game against the Steelers. But somehow when they play the Steelers, there's still always this feeling that that's somebody we're supposed to be fighting. I don't necessarily get that feeling with Baltimore. I don't necessarily get that feeling with Cleveland and Cincinnati in the rare occasions that they do meet. But I get that feeling with the Jaguars and the Steelers. And I get that feeling because all of these things that happen. We talked about Fred Taylor and Greg Lloyd and Rasheem Mathis. What about Chris Hudson when he got that fumble or that interception was running down the sideline? And I'm usually really, really transparent. It is not a lack of preparation because I'm preparing all over the place. But I remember Chris Hudson running down that sideline. Now, I think it was Bill Cowher because I couldn't remember which coach it was. And the irony in that is they ain't had that many. They only had 3, I just told you. Yeah, it was Bill Cowher. It wasn't Tomlin. And the reason why I got them confused is because Tomlin actually was accused of doing it to somebody else. Jacoby, what's his face, that used to play for the Ravens. It's not Jacoby Lane. What was it was a kick returner who was very good at it too. It was a Sunday night game. He was running down the sideline, and it appeared that Tomlin kind of came onto the field as he was looking up at the screen while the kid was running for a touchdown or whatever, or running on a kickoff. And then people thought Tomlin did something wrong. So it was more than one occasion that Pittsburgh has rubbed somebody the wrong way, and those coaches have done something that looked weird because it looked like Bill Cowher was about to trip Chris Hudson. I think it was Monday night when that happened. It's been some crazy stuff. Even the year after 2017, when the Steelers came here, it was a barn burner of a game, and the Jags sent them out of here again, packing. AB had another great game, but Jalen Ramsey had one too. It just seems to me that a lot of Jaguar teams didn't shy away from Pittsburgh's so-called quote-unquote physicality. A lot of Jaguar teams prided themselves on physicality around that 2017 era, those 3 or 4 years. And then that Tom Coughlin era was definitely, and the Jack Del Rio era. What about the David Garage scramble in Pittsburgh? You see where I'm going? I'm doing a big play show tomorrow. But today, all of these things are coming up in this rivalry with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The coaching personalities, the chin, Josh Scobie, leaving Jacksonville, going up kicking for the Steelers and missing a field goal, and Snoop Dogg going off on him. And Josh Scobie is family to us. Longtime Jaguars kicker. Shout out to my man, Josh Scobie. It just seems like there's so many weird things that have happened in Jaguars-Pittsburgh games. And Baltimore Ravens fans will say, you're talking about Jaguars and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Those are some weird things, too. Pittsburgh always finds themselves in the middle of something with somebody. It used to be the Raiders when I was a kid, but now it's like the Steelers. The Steelers, I think Pittsburgh has a whole bunch of rivalries. They really do. You remember the cat with the towel and he got in trouble? He said the towel was one of those diseases. We got so many diseases these days. I don't know which ones it was back then. I don't think it was Ebola. It was something else. I don't think it definitely was before COVID. And then that was a different cat, our mascot, Jackson DeVille. But I can't think of what it was. It might have been Ebola. I don't know what it was, but he got in trouble for that too. He said held the terrible towel up. Remember Dewey a couple of years ago snatched the terrible towel in Pittsburgh from a fan? Or was it here? He snatched it. There's always something with them. One, because it's not just at home, and people say they travel well. And then some people say they don't travel well. Here's what I think about traveling well. I don't care if the people don't come from Pittsburgh, because I know they don't come from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh ain't got enough people to be sending 30 and 40,000 people on the road. Well, I'm joking. But what it is people still travel. They just don't travel from Pittsburgh. A lot of those people might live in Palm Beach. A lot of those people might live in St. Simon Island somewhere, because what happens is my buddy Frank Frangie, who's from Pittsburgh, a native of Pittsburgh, where his parents are, and so that's where his lineage is. He told me what happened was back in the 70s when the steel mills closed, everybody spread out across the country, and they were Steeler fans. I can relate to that, and I get it. I totally do. I can relate to that. I get it. Cap from Bow City Brigade says, don't you think all those people don't come from Pittsburgh? No, they don't. I know they don't, but they come from somewhere, because I don't think all of them live here, but I do know there's a lot of fans everywhere. We talked about Dallas having more fans in the DMV than any other place outside of the state of Texas. I guarantee you there are no more fans, maybe outside of DC and Texas. I think there are more Steeler fans than anywhere, than any other team. Not outside of their own state. Pittsburgh might have more fans in every other state with the exception of the DMV, because I think that's Dallas. I really, really do. I'm going to talk about the stars, the guys who shined in those games. Wish I could tell you that Mark Brunell was one. He didn't necessarily play that good against Pittsburgh, but it wasn't necessary. We're going to get to that in segment number 3 in just a second. But if you're not tuned in to Locked On Sports Today, man, you're missing it. Because if you're watching Fox and ESPN and you mute your TV and you still hear those guys yelling, Hey, man, you ain't got to keep turning it down. Just turn the channel. Just Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, third and final segment coming here, talking about the stars. I'm going to mention some guys, man, and we're going to run down the line. We already mentioned a few of them, but the stars really, really came out at these Steelers Jaguar games. I'll get to that just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, and we always thank you guys for making us your first listen. Happy anniversary to me and my lovely wife, Kimmy. 17 years. She put up with your boy for 17 years. That's right. So my anniversary was last week, but I decided to mention it today because I'm celebrating it starting tomorrow. So we are heading out of town. We're going to have us a good time, go abroad to my second home over in Playa del Carmen. And I'm thinking about the last time I was there. It was football season. I watched the game, did podcasts from over there. I was too worried about the Wi-Fi at this place I'm staying. So we did the show before we left. But here's the thing. When it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers, 27 games, 14-13, about as evenly matched as you could be. And all of those games that I remember were real competitive. They were real fun. Two quarterbacks, Brunell, for the most part. Sometimes it was David Garrard. It was even Blake Bortles. It seemed like forever all of them were going against Ben Roethlisberger. Seems like it was forever. He was there forever, it seems like, right? Jerome Bettis, Willie Parker, Fred Taylor, Natron Means, Stars, Tony Baselli, Alan Faneca, Leon Searcy, who played for both teams, by the way, Jimmy Smith, Keenan, Antonio Brown. You're talking about heavy hitters, man. I mean, there's some Hall of Famers sprinkled in there. How about Jalen Ramsey, Brian McFadden, Lloyd, Greg Lloyd with his cheap shot stuff, Cam Hayward, the Pouncey. How about Pouncey? Rasheem Mathis, Telvin Smith, Miles Jack, Calais Campbell, all of these dudes, all of these guys, balling, cut from the same cloth, putting that time in, putting that work in. I would say on the field, the Tennessee Titans is the Jaguars' number one nemesis because of 1999. I would also say that it's a very close second. I don't think fans around here hate Pittsburgh the way that they hate Tennessee. But it's like a different kind of dislike, and it's a different kind of reason. I had a story. Let me tell you a story. I can tell you this because my friend don't care. He played for the Jaguars. He told me about the time they played on Sunday night here in Jacksonville. I think the Jaguars won, if I'm not mistaken. They may have won. They may have lost. And, of course, they may have won and they may have lost. That's my way of saying I'm not quite sure. I think they won, but I'm not quite sure. But I think they lost. Let me go back because of what happened. Let me tell you the story. This is when the old Jacksonville Landing. If y'all are not familiar with the Jacksonville Landing, there was a riverfront. It used to be like a shopping mall / restaurant / club. It was a whole bunch of stuff facing the river. They tore it down a couple of years ago in Jacksonville to create space to do some other stuff, right? It was a little bit old, outdated. And then they had a real negative shootout there in the gaming world. So they just decided, people lost their lives and they just, okay, it's time to tear this down. So after one of the games, the landing is about, a mile and a half, if that much, from the stadium. The Jaguar players, they said, hey, I have to go back to work till Tuesday. They were in there after the game. One of their little after-hour spots stayed open for them. They went in there, had cocktails. Here come 25 guys from the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's a little crew called Crew Thick, and some of them were Jaguars and some of them were Pittsburgh Steelers, some were Tennessee Titans. This is why I tell fans, y'all love to hate on teams from other players. These dudes been knowing each other forever, man. They're a fraternity. I don't know who started Crew Thick, but Crew Thick, I know, I ain't gonna snitch, but there's one of the Jaguars was roommates in college with Plaxico Burris's high school teammate and best friend. So I don't know if all of these things happen in all of these connections, because some of the guys that played for the Titans, they were a part of Crew Thick too, but everybody knew it. That place was jumping, according to my buddy who played on the team. And those guys didn't leave at 4 o'clock in the morning with police escorts. Jaguars and Pittsburgh, they hung out together. The Steelers didn't leave. The Pittsburgh guys didn't leave till the middle of the next day. I don't know if the Jaguars did that with any other team. I honestly don't. And to be honest and be quite frank, I would tell you that I really missed the Pittsburgh rivalry, but I don't miss it as much as I used to. I don't miss it because they still managed to find a way to play each other, whether it's in the regular season or the playoffs, at least enough to give you a little taste. But yeah, I'm going on record. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, and had they not realigned like we talked about in segment 2, the Pittsburgh Steelers would probably be the Jaguars' number 1 rival. 14-13. Isn't that amazing? 14-13. So just for the sake of this show, I'm going to do the Jaguars-Titans rivalry. Total meetings, 59. All-time series, Titans lead at 35-24. See, it's that reason why those jokers are still all rivalry. But now with the 14-13, you actually see why I say on the field, this rivalry was something special. And had they kept playing, instead of it being after 59 games, I guarantee you, if the Jaguars played 59 games against the Pittsburgh Steelers up to this point, let me do my math before my Duval County shortcomings come out. It'd be 25-24 Jacksonville. That's how it would be. We got some room to make up for the Titans. I talked about that too on yesterday's show. In any event, tomorrow's show is based on all-time plays. The plays that I remember, I might miss some. I know y'all going to get all over me if I don't name certain plays. But there's names like Morton Anderson, and y'all know exactly. All I got to do is name names. Morton Anderson. I'm going to try to focus on the good ones too. I'm not going to focus on that kickoff return deal that the Saints did a few years ago. And I talked about that with Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints and everybody else on Locked On NFL. They were blown away. They remember that. And they were all like, okay, when I bring this up, I'm not bringing up that play. And so I just did, but I'm not tomorrow. What I will do is promise to be here and make you my first listen. That's right. And we thank you for doing that here on Locked On Jaguars, making us your first listen because it's your team every day. I promise I'll be here tomorrow with the goods, and I know you will too because that's how we roll. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.